In 1963, Stephen Hawking, Eddie Redmayne is a physics PhD student at Cambridge, enjoying parties, rowing and banter with his friend Brian, Harry Lloyd. Professor Siama, David Thewlis gives them a difficult assignment, but Stephen brings back the right answer scrawled on the back of a train schedule. Stephen meets languages student Jane, Felicity Jones, at Barton. They are attracted to each other and attend a May ball where Stephen gets over his shyness and dances with Jane. Although Stephen is intelligent, his friends and professors are concerned about his lack of a thesis topic. After he and his professor Dennis Siama attend a lecture on black holes, Stephen speculates that black holes may have been part of the creation of the universe and decides to write his thesis on them. But one morning, Stephen suffers a bad fall in his college quad. Doctors examine him and he is told he has motor neuron disease. His muscles will degenerate and he has only 2 years to live. It will eventually leave him unable to move, swallow, and even breathe. There are no treatments, and he has approximately 2 years to live. The doctor assures Stephen that his brain will not be affected, so his thoughts and intelligence will remain intact, but eventually, he will be unable to communicate them. In anguish, Stephen turns both Brian and Jane away, but the latter pursues him. She insists he play croquet with her, which is when she sees how physically challenged he has become. Stephen is shattered, but Jane confesses she loves him and insists on marrying him. She tells his father she intends to stay with Stephen even as his condition worsens. They marry and have their first son, Robert. Stephen presents his thesis to the examination board, arguing that a black hole created the universe in a Big Bang, that it will emit heat and end in a big crunch. He begins using a wheelchair after his walking ability deteriorates. After the Hawkins have their daughter Lucy, Stephen develops a theory about the visibility of black holes and becomes a world-renowned physicist. Jane, focusing on the children as well as Stephen's health and increasing fame, is unable to work on her own thesis and becomes frustrated. Stephen tells her he will understand if she needs help. She joins a church choir, where she meets widower Jonathan and they become close friends. She employs him as a piano teacher for Robert, and Jonathan befriends the entire family, helping Stephen with his illness, supporting Jane, and playing with the children. When Jane gives birth to another son, Timothy, Stephen's mother asks Jane if the baby is Jonathan's, which she denies. Jonathan is appalled, but when he and Jane are alone, they admit their feelings for one another. Jane and Jonathan decide to step apart because they do have feelings for each other. But Stephen convinces Jonathan to return. Stephen decides to go with friends to a concert in France. But as the music plays, he coughs blood and faints, suffering from pneumonia and put on life support. To save him, doctors must operate on his throat and in his power of speech. Jane, who was on a camping trip with Jonathan, where the couple come closer, arrives in France. The doctor informs Jane that he has pneumonia and that he needs a tracheotomy to survive, but it will leave him mute. She agrees to the surgery. Stephen learns to use a spelling board and uses it to communicate with Elaine, his new nurse. He receives a computer with a built-in voice synthesizer and uses it to write a book, A Brief History of Time, 1988, which becomes an international best seller. His research is earning him global accolades, but the distance between Stephen and Jane is growing. Stephen tells Jane he has been invited to the United States to accept an award and will be taking Elaine with him. Jane faces the realization that the marriage has not been working, telling him she did her best, and they agreed to divorce. Stephen goes to the lecture with Elaine. The two have fallen in love, and Jane and Jonathan reunite. At the lecture, Stephen sees a student drop a pen. He imagines getting up to return it, almost crying at the reminder of how his disease has affected him. He goes on to give a speech telling audiences to pursue their ambitions despite the harsh reality of life. While there's life, there is hope. Stephen invites Jane to meet Queen Elizabeth II with him when being made a member of the Order of the Companions of Honor. They share a happy day together with their children. An extended closing series comprises select moments from the film, shown in reverse, back to the moment Stephen first saw Jane. The reversal is reminiscent of Stephen's research methodology of reversing time to understand the beginning of the universe. Later, Jane and Jonathan marry, and she completes her Doctor of Philosophy. She and Stephen remain close friends. Stephen declines a knighthood from the Queen and continues his research, with no plans to retire in the near future.